Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Catch-22 is the Hulu short series based on the famous book, set in the 1940s Italy and revolving around the crazy events, bureaucracy, and madness that comes with being in World War II. Episode 2 kicks off with the lads playing basketball with a makeshift hoop. They're having some fun, and all of a sudden Colonel Cathcart and Colonel Corn come up looking for Major Major, since it turns out all the majors are needed for a big committee meeting.
With all due respect, sir, I'm a sergeant.
But you're Major Major.
Yes, sir, that's my name, sir.
And the colonels aren't very happy because, they've put his name down on all these things, and, instead of actually sorting out the mess and their error, they decide it's easier to just promote him to Major. So now he's Major, 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 and off he goes in a jeep, while in a truck going the other way, Milo passes by, and he's feeling the weirdness of the army bureaucracy and random emotion, but that's his own design because...
I'm the mess officer now.
So he's totally in charge of food procurement. And Major Major, on the other hand, finds himself with his own hut and a sergeant at his disposal. Wait a minute, is that Jerry from next door?
When was the last time you saw me bake anything?
It is. There you go, Outlander peeps, get everywhere. Anyway, Major tells the sergeant not to let anyone come in to see him when he's in, but only to when he's out, and to make people wait until he's left if they wait. So basically he's getting Sergeant Towsley to do all his work for him, while he potters about with his model ship. Nice for some. Yoyo, on the other hand, is still flying missions, and he's down to 2 missions left, and then Colonel Cathcart raises the number again, so he charges into the Major's office and asks him to try and use his new rank to help him stop the numbers from being constantly raised, and sure, he says he'll get right on that. Proper officer material, this guy, yeah. So, Yoyo goes to the hospital and convinces Nurse Duckett to let him convalesce in a bed quietly under the pretense of some malady or other till the Major can sort this all out. But he only lasts a couple of days because after getting riled up by a talkative Texan talking to the bandaged up guy in the bed across the way, he ends up getting into a fight with him, so he ends up getting sent out of the hospital, and that's him back on missions again. Meanwhile, Milo's cornered the tomato market as well, or tomatoes as Americans call them, and after paying the colonels with some tasty food, he manages to get them on board with the scheme. Meanwhile, Major DeCoverley, he's been away in the newly liberated Rome trying to find accommodation facilities for the officers and men there for going on leave and stuff. And the boys take full advantage of it, the rest and the local house of ill repute, and Arfie smokes his pipe and Nately falls in love with a local girl, and Kid Samson just seems totally out of his depth, and Yoyo and Clevenger drink brandy and chat with the brothel's owner, who expounds on why Italy's a stronger nation than America because it's become expert at being conquered. Okay. But then it's home time again, and Milo tells them that the mission count's gone up again during their leave, but of course he doesn't actually care because, he's building his empire, and he's busy baffling Colonel Cathcart with a complicated pyramid scheme thing about a syndicate. And it's life as usual for Yoyo, he goes swimming, and he goes on missions, until during one of them, Clevenger's plane flies in a cloud, and never comes back out the other side. And after a few days he's listed as mission in action. And then to top it all off, Cathcart puts them on the next mission and says,
Some of you will not be coming back.
and Yossarian's stuck in the middle of this madness, stuck like he's running on the spot. So what did I think? Well, I thought this week was an interesting build on what's come before, and although I do reckon that it's probably not going to be anyone's favourite episode of Catch-22, it's got an awful lot going for it. You see, this week felt a lot to me about laying groundwork for stuff that's going on, because the novel has an awful lot of characters, and most of them have a couple of moments to shine in the story, but it really helps to know who they are. So while a lot of this week felt like it was kind of about, Yossarian as usual, but a lot of it was also about Milo Mindabender and the Major. We also got to meet Nately a wee bit, and Nurse Duckett had a couple of scenes. Now, I especially like that it's starting to also sow the seeds of what Catch-22 is about into the show. You see, just in case you don't know, the term a catch-22 means a situation you can't get out of because of contradictory or circular rules that just prevent you from being able to get out of that situation. And that term actually comes from this book. I mean, the term was made up for the book. Catch-22 was just the thing that Joseph Heller came up with, the title and the name for it. And the doc explained it last week, and we see that in the fact that Major Major gets promoted because it's actually easier for him to be made a major than for the higher ups to actually deal with the error they made. And also in the way that he deals with being a major, setting up that circular situation where no one can actually get in to see him. Or similarly, in some ways, sort of Milo's schemes with the syndicate are leading to people buying things that they technically already should get for free and paying into something that doesn't actually benefit them. But mostly, the scene that really did it is the one with Giancarlo Giannini as Marcello. Now, that really drives home the reality of not only an occupied people's mindset, but of how people survive, and a way of bending rules to do so. And it's really interesting because that kind of really sums up what Catch-22 is in a lot of ways. And it's not the full conversation from the book, which makes sense because it's an adaptation. But in the book, actually, he has a conversation with Nately, just like happens in the 1970 film. And I mean, the 1970 film version is actually one of my favourite scenes from that movie. I mean, so I was probably always going to like this. So I like in a way that they did various things with it. And in some ways, you can actually see like Giancarlo Giannini is pretty much mimicking this other actor. I mean, I don't know if that was an artistic choice by him, but it seems too close to not be an accident. It seems far too, the delivery of some of the lines are just very, very similar. And there's nothing wrong with that because that scene, with the old French actor is absolutely brilliant. Another thing I really liked is I noticed that when Milo is like describing the particulars of some of his schemes, and twice now in 2 different episodes, he's been drowned out by the sound of a passing vehicle.
It's actually an infinity percent markup. You got it.
I mean, it happened last week as well, and that kind of tickled me a bit. It's just a little stylistic thing that I thought was funny. But also, what really stood out to me this week was that we got a real sense of like the frustration, as well as like Yoyo's innate selfishness, which comes across, and it's definitely a side effect of him being in this situation. But like how he gets angry at the Texan, who's actually just a nice guy, who's trying to chat to this guy, who's bandaged up, and like how he wants Major to help him. He doesn't say help anyone else; it's just him. But we're also starting to get to know the rest of the people. And that's really good because I'd forgotten who's who mostly, but like the actors wise, since that name scene in episode 1. But now we've actually got like a few more things to recognise and relate about these characters. We got to see Nately a bit. We got to see Arfie with his pipe. Who I just realised is actually the record producer guy from A Star Is Born. Hey, nice one. I mean, that's a really good film. You should totally check it out. I also like that they're giving a little bit more time to Nurse Duckett and giving her things to do. I mean, she gets a little bit sidelined in the book and in the old film, but we also got that wee girl in the street introduced, and I think I know who that character turns out to be, but I don't think she actually has a name. She isn't actually given a name in the book, but I'll be interested to see if it turns out if it's a new character or if it is the person I think it's supposed to be. But on a side note, like that guy in the plaster cast, I just loved his wee lines during the argument.
We don't even know if he's alive in there.
I can hear you.
I know you.
Come on, guys.
I mean, that had me in kinks. It was just such a lovely little moment. And it's pretty much a far cry from the 1970s version, where he's really only there for a setup of one of the strangest moments in the book. But as I said, I mean, this wasn't the best episode. I mean, it wasn't bad, and there was nothing really particularly wrong with it, but it felt a little bit clunky. I mean, for want of a better word. I mean, the flow of the episode and the pacing wasn't quite as smooth as it could have been. I don't know if that was a problem in the edit or just the scene choice and the scene order, but I really kind of felt it while I was watching it. As well as there was some scenes that ended really quite jarringly in a way that felt like maybe they'd been edited down or truncated, and the choice to suddenly cut to black between scenes also, in a little bit of a way, kind of feels like an odd choice. Maybe that's a thing for like advert breaks or something, but I just don't know. But it is also clear that in trying to make the story more linear, they've lost some of the abstract weirdness of the book. Because the book jumps around absolutely all over the place, and it's like somebody like kind of forgetfully retelling a story with like random things popping in their head in the meantime, and little facets of information that don't seem relevant at the time, but then become relevant later when you hear more about some other aspect of something. And the book's really like that. The scene with like the plaster cast guy. I mean, that's literally like one line in the book about like Yossarian looking at this guy in a plaster cast, and it's a strange moment. And it was in the 1970s film. And I'm pretty sure it's not meant to be taken literally. It's more like a physical manifestation of Yossarian feeling trapped in a Catch-22. So, I mean, I don't think that'll happen in this version of the show, unless it's maybe during like some kind of like fever dream or a nightmare or something. But I mean, that's another thing that's slightly bugging me. But it's not about the show; it's more to do with me, and it's one of the reasons I don't tend to do, reviews of things that I've already seen. I'm wary too much of actually spoiling stuff for later because I know this book pretty well and I know the film pretty well, and I'm surprised that there's some choices in this that have come across as a little bit blunt and a little bit obvious, but they might have gone over folks' heads. And one thing particularly felt like a setup for something later on. I mean, it's definitely a setup for something later on. And I'm going to put a pin in that. I'm not going to mention what it is, but there's a specific character beat in this that seems quite random, but it is much more important later. But I felt it was a bit too much of a sledgehammer. But anyway, I'm really on board with this show, and I'm finding it fascinating, and I hope that other folks are as well. So yeah, don't be shy and let me know what you think. But I mean, if you can, please try not to spoil anything just in case, and be a bit vague, because people who haven't actually watched the show, who are watching along with these reviews, might enjoy that a bit more. But anyway, until next time, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.